Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your tech and media production questions every single day. Cindy Drozda from Erie, Colorado was our reader today. Cindy, what's our first question?
Our first one's from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. What cameras and lens would the panel recommend for a house of worship where volunteers with minimal photography knowledge will be operating and learning the cameras on a weekly basis?
And Alex Lindsay is going to start us off. Alex?
It depends. So it depends on your budget, what your long-term goals are. Now, when it comes to a camera operation, I can train a camera operator in about 4 hours to do pretty good work. Like you probably wouldn't notice if you're watching a regular show that person had never used the camera before. And I've done it many times. So it is a function of, because it really draws back not so much to the camera operator, but the director. So the director telling them what to do and you having enough cameras so that you get to where you need to go. And it means that your edit might be a little bit slower, but a lot of people aren't going to notice that. I mean, a good TD will notice it. Some of us might notice that we're hanging on something a little too long. But for the most part, them understanding, when I say you don't have enough nose room, what does that mean? When I say you don't have enough headroom, give me less headroom or give me more headroom or give me, those kind of center it up. There's a bunch of terms that I want them to know how to, when they hear it, I want them to know what that means. And that's all I need them to know. And then from there, what will make it easier is for them to have, handle-based controls. It will take a little bit longer for them to figure it out. But having a motorized lens that gives them zoom and focus on their arms is going to be easier for them to learn how. They just learn how to do it that way if you can. It's an added expense. Now, when you don't know if you're going to have very many volunteers, then a lot of times in this kind of environment, we tend to move to PTZs because then you have one person, one volunteer that's moving all the cameras, and that makes it a lot easier to have a couple people that can do that. I was at a house of worship, and there's a couple here in Marin have really nice broadcast cameras, like really nice broadcast cameras. And I talked to the person because they have a CL5, and they've got these broadcast cameras, and they've got this huge Swiss in the room, like in the back of the room. You can see this huge thing, and I was like, "Why did this is a house of worship? Why are you putting so much into it?" It's a lot easier to get volunteers, because everybody wants to learn how to use the cameras and use the mixers and use the switchers because they're broadcast ready. And so, if you want to get in, many of us, I volunteered at a church doing audio. That's how I got into doing media at all. And so it's a great on-ramp if you invest in the hardware. And the person that I was talking to that kind of led that team said, we used to have stuff that wasn't, just smaller and not very expensive. And it was just always a chore to try to find people. He goes, now people have to come in, they'll sit there and roll cables and run errands for a year to get access to the cameras. So labor, he explained, was way harder to solve than the hardware, and having people willing to be there every week and look at it as an opportunity to be there. So I think that it depends on how you how you view it. It depends on what your congregation looks like. Depends on whether they might be interested in that kind of thing and whether you're ready to give them the training, because obviously you need to train them up on doing those things. The reality is once a camera is set up, especially if you have an engineer in the background, if you've got a broadcast camera, the camera operator during a show should be doing zoom, focus, and pointing. Like that, there's not a lot of other things that they need to know about the camera other than how to frame it and how to zoom and how to focus. So because it's not in India, when we work there, they have an engineer that puts all that together. The camera operators don't. They did that for years. The camera operators only do zoom, focus, and pointing the camera. If anything else needs to be done, they go have a cigarette, and someone else comes in and works on the camera, and they come back and work on and do their thing. So, it's not unusual to be in that situation.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on budget, and do you have an LED wall behind where you're going to be getting some kind of rolling shutter type of thing where you have to have really expensive cameras to solve that problem, or do you want to get something like Alex was mentioning, like a PTZ camera that'll have HDMI out, SDI out, USB out, and then NDI. So with NDI, you could do things like NDI bridge, where now I could control this camera with a little game controller from Xbox, where you can use that to pan left, pan right. The nice thing about these cameras for house of worship is, depending on the software that you use, you can set up all these presets and have them visually put on a touch screen so that the operator can just either be told, or if they're in the same room, a lot of times they're just shoulder to shoulder, or if they don't have comms, you could just say, hey, give me the wide shot, and give me whatever other shot, and they're all presets in there. So it's very simple for a new person to come in and be trained within minutes. I mean, it's not that hard to push a button. But yeah, in the old days, we used to have the zoom handles, and it was a lot longer process to have big XL1s and things like that, and explain focus. Now I can completely take control of that camera through a web browser window. So every single camera has an IP address, and I could just say, hey, I need to brighten that camera up. I can shade it either in the software, or I can shade it in the camera itself. So, and then if you have lots of money, the new bad boy for doing these kind of productions is the AM7. This is about $11,000 for this camera, and it's got some really wicked auto tracking. This is the one to watch. We'll see more information on this one coming out at ISC in the next few weeks. But this camera is shipping, and it matches well with the FR7, and it has a lot more reach. So when you get into the FR7 territory, you're talking about different lenses and things like that can't go very far. This camera can get that reach and has the auto tracking. So I'd be looking at the AM7 if budget was of not an issue. But for most small houses of worship, PTZ optics would be the way to go, or some bird dogs, something like that. But this is a very nice camera.
Alex, do you want to get back in?
Yeah, one of the things, one of the things we're seeing more interest in right now is also people, in the same way that they have multiple services in a house of worship, we're seeing more people make the second or third service be virtual only. They're using the church as a set, but there's nobody in it, and that allowed them to bring their cameras forward, and they focused much more on the online audience, and the response, the average view time is. With the one that it's not the one that we talked, average view time went up by 5x. Like I was like, when I said, are you really? Is this really worth doing for another one? And he's like, well, 5 times more people are watching 5 times longer when we get rid of the audience and move all the cameras forward. But they're still using their space, and so we're talking to some other folks about that too. It kind of lit up. It was last fall that kind of lit up for me of thinking about that as a more. When I talked to this person that was doing it, and there's a lot of spaces that people spend a lot of money on, and you can use that as the set, and it just means that it's a much more direct experience with the online audience rather than you being challenged by lots of lower quality cameras with bigger throw. I mean, that camera that Guy said is incredible view, but as you make those sensors get smaller, it just doesn't look as special.
It's a 1-inch sensor. It looks special. Go watch some of that footage.
I'm sorry. I'm a Super 35 guy. It always looks better than Super 35.
Chris Fenwick, you wanted to weigh in?
Yeah, recently I went to a church where it was a smallish room, a few hundred people, and but they had really great coverage. They actually had 2 people all blacked out with cameras on stage shooting the band. Wandering about, slightly distracting, but they had no IMAG. So those shots only went to the web, or as it turns out, to the lobby. And I kept wanting to leave and go stand in the lobby and watch the coverage, out there. But it was interesting. I personally had not been in a church where they had such good coverage, but didn't let you in on the secret, so to speak.
I've seen some, and again, it's because they're trying to serve, but they're trying to serve this online audience, which is getting bigger than the in-room audience. And then the person that I was talking to at this one last fall just said, well, the online audience now is twice as big as the one that comes to any of the services, and so it just makes more sense to just build one for them. He said, the thing is they're able to move. They had this huge increase with that, but they're able to not. They don't have open speakers, so they don't have any reverb. They don't have any, they change all the lighting. They have a lighting grid. It's one of those churches that has a lot of gear. So they change all the lighting for it in a way that works for that. and they noticed that a lot of the broadcasts that were going out in a variety of different denominations, people are only watching the sermon, so it doesn't have all the other stuff. Like it just has the sermon. It's the sermon, and the reason I was talking to them is they were looking at Q&A systems. So, but for the online audience at the end. But I think it's an interesting puzzle. Like I know that there's a lot of small churches right now. The one that I grew up going to included, that has a dwindling population, inside the church. And so they're all trying to figure out what to do with the cavity, that is the church that's now empty. And so we're thinking about what they can do in a variety of different denominations, whether it's, so it's interesting.
As always, the show chat is very active on this topic, so don't forget, if we are always taking your questions. You can ask questions, chat about the questions, vote on the questions in Mukana or our live Q&A system. Go to the officehours.global/join location, and we'll send you an email within a day or two. Once you've done that, you can ask, vote on, and discuss the show's questions. That's officehours.global/join. Next question.
From Craig Kadoki in Toronto. DPA has entered the wireless mic market. Link provided.
Well, we're pretty excited about this. Courtney Gooden, you want to start us off?
I don't know how excited. DPA does make very high-quality microphones. They've been famous for that for years, making instrumentation mics and then delving into lavaliers and boom-mounted or headset-worn mics, which are very high quality. So now they're getting involved with digital wireless. So let's take a look at the what they have here, the new in-series digital wireless system. All the stuff that they show is rack mount receivers, which is a Diversity digital wireless system. I think it has Dante built in, but it comes with that. So that may be, and I don't see a price on it, so I'm not sure how expensive this is. It's true digital wireless, and it's quite wideband. It goes 450 to 850, I think, somewhere in that neighborhood of UHF. And it has a lot of front panel controls, which are nice. It seems to be AC only. The handheld, they have a handheld and a body pack transmitters. The handheld has a nice little display in the bottom. I think you can cover it up, an OLED display that tells you what megahertz it's operating at. And because it's so digitally switchable and synthesized 470 to 870 megahertz, it can be operated in many different countries depending upon where their license bands are. It has a nice little OLED display on the transmitter. One thing that I don't like about this design is the transmitter body packs are huge in comparison. They look like the old VHF body packs we used to have back in the 70s, and the antenna is quite large. And maybe they have to make that antenna that large because it has multiple stems inside that antenna to accommodate the agility of the different frequencies. So maybe they have multiple tuned antennas inside that connected antenna. I'm not sure since it's brand new. Let's see what other, and since it's Dante enabled, I don't think you're going to have to buy a card to put it. Look at the size of that antenna on the body packs. I think the target for these is for television, news broadcast, maybe some television, houses of worship where you've got handhelds, or for music situations where you're going to have the handhelds on stands. And you can have a rack mount in the back with the receivers on it. It seems to have some powered antenna ports on it so that you can run remote antennas up that are powered. So that's convenient. You want to put some shark fins at a distance from the rack mount receiver. That's handy to have. Like I say, I don't know the price, but because of the size of these transmitters, it's going to be very hard to conceal that transmitter in someone if you have it as a body pack on let's say a singer or a performer that's on stage that's using a lavalier, a hidden lavalier. It's going to be hard to conceal that. And in motion picture work, where it almost always has to be concealed, it would be kind of a disadvantage to get that big a body pack when a lot of their competitors have ones that are about this big. So
Alex Lindsay. Oh, I'm sorry.
So anyway, and I don't know what kind of batteries it takes and what the battery life is. It may be that big because it has to have a huge battery to transmit all digital signal.
Alex?
It says 8 hours on a standard AA, two standard AA batteries, or it says on standard AA batteries. It does say 2. It might be 4. Maybe that's why it's so big. But it does look like it's an interesting puzzle there of, let's make sure that this can use standard batteries. It's a big issue for us to, when you're doing a show, to be able to have it go long enough. A lot of us, that might be why the size is there. It does feel a little large, but we've definitely put ones on at least that big onto speakers in a corporate in what you like corporate broadcast, house of worship, all that size body pack. I don't think really is that much of an issue. I do agree that for film it's probably too big. And Jack Cannon says it takes AA's, and so it's interesting to promise 8 hours, which for us means a solid 2 hours. so we would, before we swap them out and put them into the test bin of AA's, which we usually have hundreds of, and put the new ones in for the next session. So yeah, but it does. I mean, DPA makes great stuff, so it'd be great to see. I'd be curious how it compares with something like obviously the sound devices and Shure and Electrosonic. Those are the other ones that we probably use the most.
Guy Cochran?
Yeah, having used some of the higher end stuff like the Shure Axients, that's what it comes down to is sound quality. And DPA is known for just world renowned having the best microphone. So being able to put it all in one is a very nice offering to see, but I'm wondering what the price per channel is going to be, because Shure Axients has 4 as a quad for $7,000. That's just for the receiver, and then each body pack's about another $1,000. So what does it cost per channel? The other thing that some of these theaters have is the software wireless workbench to be able to dial in all of these very quickly. You scan, and it's a standard. So they're going to have a tough hill to climb to get into some of these places that are going for like 30 channels plus. And then there's also encryption. So some of these folks that are into government type secrecy stuff, they don't want that transmission being picked up. And so I'm curious as to what they've got for encryption. But yeah, having Dante in there and being in a pure digital end-to-end workflow, not having to go to the analog world, when you get to hear this stuff, this is the benefit of going to a trade show and actually hearing end-to-end what it sounds like, because skipping that whole analog, I mean, from the capsule to Dante into your system, whether you're monitoring with headphones or hearing it back out of a mixer and into another theater with sound reinforcement, it's amazing how pure that signal is, because you lose things in that translation. Preamps are dirty. Preamps can cause noise. This is end-to-end, so clean, it's hard to believe. It sounds real. Like the nuances in somebody's voice, everything's there. So I'm excited to see what this sounds.
Courtney, you want to swing back in?
Yeah, we didn't touch on the software. There is software that comes available for it that you can remotely control and see, the frequency. You can change frequencies on them, I think, remotely from the software. The software, I think, maybe it's browser-based. It's cross-platform, runs on a Mac or a PC. So it's handy to have in a situation, like a stage show or a house of worship, where it can have control over all the transmitters from a single point of remote access using the software. I'm not sure. I think they are 24-bit. It says the dynamic range is 128 dB, so that's usually signifies 24-bit dynamic range. So I don't think they're doing any internal recording. It doesn't mention anything like that. Being a true digital, since it has to do A to D conversion in the transmitter itself, or in the handheld microphone or the body pack. It'd be easy to record, digital in a micro SD card on it, but it doesn't mention anything like that if it doesn't local recording. So there's that.
Let's go on to our next question.
From the QR code, Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts is asking, I have completed a complicated edit of a 3-person video podcast in Final Cut Pro on a Mac. I want to export separate audio tracks for each person to send to my sound engineer, but I only see how to send all dialogue together. Advice?
And Chris Fenwick's going to help you out here. Chris?
So, Francis, here's the deal. I'm concerned about your you mentioned it was a complicated edit. I know those edits. This is one of those things that separates, often I talk about there are people who edit and there are people who are editors. And it's very easy to jump into an edit software and say, look at me, I'm cutting away. And there's setup stuff you haven't done early enough to make it easy. But I can show you what you want to do. Essentially, and I'm going to just show you a modified timeline here. Here's a couple of people in a timeline. Now, both of these people are multicam edits because I have this little icon. But essentially what you want to do is I'm going to open up the multicam. Here's this guy talking. Okay, here's his shot. And I come in here to assign audio roles. And it says here I have, talent 1. That's just because I made that. And once I do that, it changes colors. Then I'm going to go back out to the other person, select that, assign audio roles. Now, I don't have a talent 2, so let me show you how I made that. You just come in here to edit roles, add a thing, talent 2, click like that, hit apply, and now that one will end up being purple. Okay, and that's going to think just a second. Then when I step back out here, you can see that my people have different colors. They are now separate audio roles and not ganged together under the dialogue. And then when you hit export, you go setting for roles. You can actually, sorry, I'm set into an audio only export from the last thing I did. Go like that. You go to roles, and you can actually export a multi-track QuickTime movie or separate files for each role, and that will give you the separate stems for each person. Now, you mentioned it was a complex edit. That probably means there's a lot of edits, and unfortunately, at this stage, you're going to have to go through each clip and reassign it to the appropriate role. You may be able to use your timeline index thing and select all of Bob and say, change that. But this is clearly something that's easier done before you start your edit. Because if you make the adjustment while the clip is still in the bin, every instance in the timeline will already have the appropriate role assigned to it. This is something I do all the time, and it makes these things on the final export much easier.
Alex?
And if you're wondering, Francis, how common it is to know how to do this, to do these roles and do these track, and I know that you probably think that everybody knows how to do it. I've been using Final Cut since 0.9, and when I saw your question, I was like, I hope Chris or Bill are here. So I've been using Final Cut since 1999, and I was like, I know it's roles. I don't know how the roles work, but I know that you have to use roles. So I would have told you have to go and look at roles and do it. That was a much better explanation, but it's not a lot of Final Cut users would not know how to do that. So
which is a little bit sad because it's unbelievably powerful.
Yeah,
I'll give you one example. I've been doing these audiobooks. I could have as many as 25 to 40 characters. Yeah. And if I assign a role to each character, one of the things I can do with that is when I'm editing a character, I'm looking to make that character consistent through the whole thing. I can actually move the role for that character up adjacent to my video timeline. So I'm focused on just that. And I can hop from piece to piece for that character. So much time saving, particularly if I'm trying to even out something over the course. And that's true of music production or anything else.
Yeah. Because I know it exists because I was talking to Steve Bays about it years ago, and I was like, I just can't figure out how I can't get a hold of this. He goes, are you using roles for that? And I was like, no.
It is an amazing capability.
It's really super. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of things hidden in Final Cut like that. That's why people use it for speed.
Yeah. I want to say one other thing about it. If you have a complex thing like this, early on in your edit, you can, and I'm going to go back to my screen here for a second. You can, on this export window, you know what? I'm still on audio only. That did not stick until I actually exported something. On this thing, once you set up the gizmo the way you want it, the export setting, you can save that as a preset for like my cool project, and you can do that early in the edit. I do stuff like this oftentimes when I know that a complex export is coming at the end of the project, but I'm waiting on client approval for this particular iteration of the timeline. I'll set all that stuff up and check it. As a matter of fact, Alex, I think I did something for you once where we had to export like 8 different audio tracks, and I was like, I'm going to get this set up. And I think on one of my machines, I actually still have that preset for, Alex's whatever project. But being able to save that, give it a name, and then at the end of your project, I've tested it. I know it works. Boom, 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 export, boom, done. Don't have to think about it. And it's really nice, especially when you're in a time crunch at the end of something. If you've done that brain work ahead of time and you're all set up for it, it's really a shame that more people don't understand this. It kind of falls under the victimization of what Apple calls progressive disclosure. It's a simple app unless you want it to be complicated, and then it can be really complicated.
And Mickey would prefer us not to use this technique if you're sending it back to someone who's going to take it into Pro Tools. He suggests X2 Pro 5, which is translates audio timelines from Final Cut to Avid, and so it'll create an AAF file. So that's another. It depends on what you're sending it out to and what you're trying to do with it, Francis, as to whether you want to do something. This is a very fast way to do it. Potentially fast way to do it. But if you're going to send it to someone in post to do more work on it, they may prefer the X2 Pro. It's x2pro.net is the website.
I'll make one more comment. You can actually set these rules in camera on many cameras, which means that your project will import with every lav, every boom pre-marked and done. So you don't even have to do this in edit. It comes in pre-marked. That's the kind of metadata workflow that Final Cut pioneered for this stuff back 10 years ago. And so that's one of the things that saves you a lot of time if you learn the whole system. But you do, as Chris and everybody else has mentioned, the more you know about it going in, the more time you can save. But stuff you do upstream in metadata manipulation carries through the whole project all the way out to your exports in a really lovely way. All right, let's go on to the next.
Here's that metadata that Bill was just talking about. This is the audio file that came from the field. I have mix left, mix right, boom, and lav for that one person right there.
Right. And so just think amount of time that your editor does not have to spend going through and tagging these audio files. They came in literally with all that work already done because the recordist in the field knew to do that. All right, next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. Is there any reason Loopback being downloaded and installed on computers in an education environment might cause security issues? Having it would certainly help with playback volume issues in classrooms.
Alex Lindsay is going to start us off. Alex?
Yes, but I don't know if it matters. It's going to be there's some security issues. If someone has Loopback, they could build things that were running that are running naturally, that are sending your audio from one thing out to something else. So if you're not paying attention, because it's not just opening Loopback. Once you open Loopback and you set up a workflow, those things are just kind of available in the computer. And so you could theoretically have something running that was in the background that was saying, hey, do this and stream it out, and do this and do, send it out. So there are some security concerns. Is it really an issue for your students? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's that big of a deal. It depends on what you're working on. I will say that most of the systems at schools that have been for the last 20 years that I worked at reset themselves either every night or every week. And so they have a clean version of what the computer is supposed to look like, and it just blanks the computer out every at a certain interval. And it just gets everything back to a base state. I know that at the college that I taught at, it was every night. Like every night it would reset itself. And it also kept the students from feeling like they could leave anything on the hard drive, because we would tell you, like at midnight, when you come in the morning, nothing's going to be there. Like it's going to be all erased.
Chris Fenwick?
Bring a floppy disk, take your work home. I was also going to say Loopback, unlike Audio Hijack, its cousin, once you set up something in Loopback, it is always doing Loopback things, whether or not you have launched Loopback. Audio Hijack, on the other hand, it can only do Audio Hijack things if you launch Audio Hijack. So that's part of the reason why it's potentially a security thing, because nobody has to launch it, once you've set up something in the background, it's doing loopback things. Also, it gets access to microphones, so that could always be a security thing.
Next question.
Coming in through the QR code, Jean J. Anthony in Skokie, Illinois asks, should we use oxybot or codelight for our projects?
Alex Lindsay, do you know about these?
It depends. It depends on what your project is, and probably not either. so like that, depending on what you're doing, if you're not really tied into oxybot, as I've never heard of oxybot. It is, as best I can tell, a visual effects firm in Japan. And codelight is a development platform. It just depends on what you're trying to build and what you're trying to do as to what those are. So you'd have to let us know what the intention is, and then we can start talking about the tools.
Hey, we mentioned Mukana earlier, which is the way you can get questions into the show. If you want a quicker way, a little faster one, you can just type askofficehours.global into your web browser. That's askofficehours.global. I'm going to toss up the QR code here. You can also just take a picture of that with your phone or your iPad or whatever else you've got. Both of those are going to get you into the system. We're going to take a quick look at that, make sure that the question is well formed, and we appreciate you doing that because they are going to be read out live on the air. So if you make them conversational, one question per admission. Don't put a string of 3 or 4 questions, and try to be concise. Make sure that it's easy to read for our crew here. But that's the QR code process of getting into things, askofficehours.global. Next question.
From Steve Brenneman in Indianapolis. Do you charge significantly less for a production if the client is a not-for-profit organization and used to getting a discount? If so, has that become an issue for pricing other productions when a client has learned about the deal?
Courtney Gooden's going to start us off on this. Courtney?
Yeah, I'm of the mind that I've always charged, and I've worked with a lot of charitable organizations and running a prompting company, about 90% of our live prompting engagements have to do with fundraisers for charities, and we always charge our full amount. Because, as you mentioned in your question, you don't want your other clients to say, but you work for that price, lower price for those guys. Can I get that same rate? And trust me, not-for-profit organizations need a deduction. Otherwise, they become for-profit organizations. So your fees are paid by them and deductible. If you really believe in, and I feel that if you really believe in that, the charitable work that organization is doing, rather than just volunteering your time, which is not really deductible on your tax or theirs, you charge them the full amount, have them pay you that full amount, and then tell them you agree to we'll make a donation in the amount of your salary or more after the invoice has been paid. That way, they'll get their donation in, they'll get their deduction in, so they can remain a nonprofit organization, and you can deduct it because you invoiced it and then showed a separate charitable donation. So it's better for all around, I think, if you handle it that way. If you believe in the organization and you really want to help them out, that's the best way to do it in my book.
Chris Fenwick.
February 4th, 2025. Mark this day in your calendar. Fenwick agrees with Courtney 100%. I totally agree. The other thing to think about when you start giving up things, if you have employees and I want to give up my time for something, I can't necessarily ask my employees to do that. So then all of a sudden I'm paying my employees, but our company is doing something for free. That just gets messy. That's not to say I haven't done a lot of things for free, but I like to keep it totally off the books if I want to do it for free. But otherwise, yeah, charge full price.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, a lot of times I try to look at what I might be able to do for a nonprofit that is interesting to me. And that means that usually I want to experiment on something, or I want to train people, or I want to do something. So if they can't afford it, a lot of times I have to admit, I don't do the whole charge them full and then give money back. I can't manage the paperwork. So I'd rather just, so I'm just going to say, we've done this even with office hours, cover cover all the pizza and we'll come in and do something because we're interested in learning how to do something like the soccer games. We've had people, cover the pizza costs, or cover the food costs so that we can come in and because we haven't done a soccer game. so I'm not going to charge for it because I don't know how to do it. So I use nonprofits' needs oftentimes to experiment, train, figure something out. So it's never the kind of production that I would do. And I've had nonprofits come in and recently, and I was doing something for not very much. I was just kind of covering the basic costs because I don't know how to do this thing, and I'm trying to figure it out. And it's a small crew, and I'm doing a lot of things myself that I would normally not do. And they said, well, how much would this cost? And so I gave them the quote, like, this is what it would cost. And they're like, oh. Like if I brought it in, but it would be a different team. It'd be a bigger team. It'd be a thing, and so on and so forth. So what I don't do is the same thing I do for my regular day job for nonprofits. But what I do is there's all kinds of ways of figuring stuff out that may not make as much money or any money, but I'm getting something out of it. So I know what I'm getting out of it as I go into it. But again, I don't do anything complicated just because I hate paperwork more than almost anything else in my business. So I will do nothing that requires me to make it more complicated from a business perspective.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, and definitely check with your CPAs if you're trying to write this stuff off, because I did some
and by the way,
productions.
just to Guy's point, I don't try to write it off. Like that would be more paperwork.
So we went down this path where we would just submit an invoice just to show what it would look like, and then when we asked at the end of the year, they were saying it'd be too complicated to put all this through. If you're going to give, just give, And so that was the thing, is we just would do these large productions, and eventually we wound up getting BC Live to come in, which is a huge company that came in and just took over, and all I had to do was direct at that point, because I was buying TriCasters and just getting crazy to do a production for free. And it just depends on if you truly believe in the cause. So if you are the owner of the business, it's nice when you can just give just to give. But as far as if another client sees the deal, it's like, hey, I like those guys. I believe in the cause. I'm here to help them out. And I'd rather give my time, which is more valuable than money in a lot of cases. So, and my team's time amplified. And if it's a good cause, they all believe, and it gets momentum going.
I'm going to support Courtney's thought because I did that exactly. I billed them full rate. I made a cash donation. I just wrote them a check after I had been paid for a big chunk. And oddly enough, that put me in the second to the top tier of donators. So I got invited to the annual banquet where we all walked up on stage and got kudos from the crowd for being big donors. So sometimes it's just this back end little thing. If you're trying to build reputation in the community, there's a lot of different ways to do this. You should probably check with your actual accountant about what's appropriate in your circumstance. But there's a lot of different ways to do this. Guy, you wanted to hop back in on this?
Yeah, same thing. Exact same thing happened to me, where we had the mayor, senators, all these bigwigs that came in. And when I sat down at the banquet and I opened up the pamphlet, and we were right there, top billing next to Boeing and Home Street Bank and all these guys, all because we gave. So the good karma that comes about, even if you're not trying, sometimes it just falls out, and you're like, wow, holy cow, my name's on the big screen now.
Wasn't expecting that. That was my first thought. Alex?
And this experimental stuff that I do, I don't really pay much attention to whether they're for-profit or nonprofit. It's like if they don't have the money and I see an opportunity to learn something or do something or move something down the path, then I take it. I know what I'm getting out of that. And probably a fair amount of my time is done for things that don't make money right now. The thing that I'm working on right now, which is, pretty big project, started with me showing up for free, for 6 months. Like I showed up in meetings, did things, built drawings, did things for 6 months. And then it turned into, and which seemed like a real dead end for people in my company that I might answer to, but it generated millions of dollars of production, but it just took a long time. It's just a slow cook. And I would be very, I think that I'm fine with people saying they're never going to do any work if they're not getting paid. Just know that I'm eating your lunch. And by the time people are paying for it, they're paying me, not you. So I'm very ruthless about doing free stuff to get my foot in the door. And I think that it's so just be wary of saying I'm never going to do anything. Now there's a lot of things people come and ask me to do, and I say, well, that's going to cost this much money. Like like I'm not. You don't have anything but cash for me. For like that I need from you. But when I'm trying to get into something or I'm trying to learn something new, I'm often very, very aggressive about moving into that market.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York, asked the panel, with home internet backup systems, how can the backup know to kick in when the primary fails? Speedily.
Guy Cochran, start us off.
The best way is to get some kind of hardware that'll give you a primary and a secondary connection. So this is the back end of the Unify Ubiquiti Dream Machine. You can see the primary WAN is port 10, secondary is port 9. And what I have it here for is failover only. So you don't want to do distributed because like this internet here is a 10 gig connection and this one's only 100 megabit. So I don't want anything coming over this unless I direct it to. And you can get so granular with this system that you can actually say like, hey, I want this one specific device that I don't trust to be on this secondary WAN. But this is how you do it. You could do this with a PEP link or other items as well. But the nice thing about having this kind of system is that you can go granular and see everything about every device on the network. And these are only about $400, so they're really nice to have. I know Alex just got one as well, and it's a sweet device once you start digging in.
Alex Lindsay.
I have to admit, I went full bore. So I got the modem, I got the router, I got some wireless, and it's been pretty magical. Being able to get to things and see whatever what's going on. It's not quite what I was used to with Meraki, but it's getting there. So it's pretty good. As far as the backup goes, just know that generally there's going to be a gap there in time. It's not going to happen seamlessly. And the reason for that is that otherwise you'd be going back and forth all the time. Like something hiccups a little bit and it jumps back and forth. So very rarely do we see it, jumping back and forth. Even with our Merakis, we would have a second or two before it would jump to the other one. If you're doing streaming, sometimes it doesn't matter if you're doing HLS streaming because it's between, there's a gap, there's a delay. But if you're doing other things, it could be problematic. So just that's what you have to know when you do it is that it may not be as stable as it's not going to be something that's oftentimes seamless to go from one to the other.
Next question.
Here's a QR code question from Mariella Shushamira in Wablo. Our ATEM has no audio. What's up with that?
Alex, can you help her?
How are you trying to get it in? So we don't know if you're trying to get audio in via the inputs, audio inputs embedded into the HDMI or SDI. So let us know what which ATEM. There's so many, and some of them have analog inputs, some of them have MADI inputs, some of them have. So let us know what you're using and where the audio is trying to arrive, and we might be able to be clearer.
Courtney.
Yeah, as Alex said, there's too many questions there with that ATEM. It depends whether it's an ATEM Mini or an ATEM Extreme or any of the ME2s, ME4s, Constellations. Check the each input. If the audio is coming in over HDMI, make sure the inputs open the software for it, and make sure you can see the audio coming in there in the audio panel on the software, and make sure it's turned on. Because you can turn it off and you can put it on audio follows video, which means you won't hear the audio until it's switched to that particular input. So just make sure those settings are on, and you have volume settings, of course, on those as well. And so look for the signals indicated in the software for each of those inputs, analog, mic 1, mic 2. Make sure if you're going in the analog mini plug inputs, make sure they're set in the software setup for the ATEM. You can set the level that those ports are expecting, either mic level or line level. If they're set to line level and you're going in with a mic level signal, you might not see anything significant or hear anything significant coming in over that. So make sure the levels are set to mic or line, depending upon what you're feeding them. That's a start, but we'd really have to know more to get any further.
Next question.
From the QR code, Chris Benedict in Bellingham, Washington. Using Zoom ISO, how do you record the ISOs? Is a hardware device needed, and or can additional software be used to make the recording on the same laptop as Zoom, the same laptop that has Zoom running? What is recommended?
Guy Cochran, start us out.
There's a number of ways to go about this. Depends on how crazy you want to get. So I'm gonna just warn you, I went crazy. So this is gonna. I'll show you the easy way and then the hard way. So here's Zoom ISO. You can see that right now this is outputting on a deck link, and the deck link is able to go into an ATEM Extreme, and I can pick up the feeds there. You also have the option to go NDI. So if you just want to go on your local machine, you could go NDI, or you could even go Siphon if it's running Mimo Live. You might just want to pick up those channels on Siphon, and that would make life pretty easy. So the easy way, Mimo Live, NDI, or Siphon, and drop those in. The harder way with hardware, but guaranteed results in case something crashes, would be to suck it into your ATEM, and then I guess another easy way would be to just hit record here and have the ISOs with record. Make sure this box is checked because it's not checked by default. It's ISO record all inputs. This will give you a pretty low data rate, though. It's not Zoom's already at 6 megabit, and I think these records are about the same. They're not super pretty. Now, the harder way that I have mine set up, so I have 8 inputs. It goes into a Mac Mini M4, Sonnet box, quad card, deck link, and from there it goes into a rack that has 9 key pros, and I could trigger all these at the same time with the same time code, and then I could pull all the files off for the edit pretty quick. So you could go this route. Now they have AJ and actually the HyperDeck as well. You can do 4 1080s in one device. So my key pros are old, but the newer devices, the new firmware that just got released last month will allow one little box. It's about this big to do 4 SDI inputs with one device, which cleans up a lot of stuff. Like my rack around the corner would not look as crazy and be as it's really loud. So it just depends on what you want to do, but my records are guaranteed.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, for our productions, we use full-sized HyperDecks. So we do the same thing that Guy's doing, but we oftentimes have multiple computers that are doing those, and so those are either going out of cards that are in what was PCs, now Macs. These are pumping out 4 to 8 outputs per computer. Those are going into a router. From that router, they're going into the full-size SSD HyperDecks, and we hit record on all of them. So it is so similar to the AJA Key Pros. We run them that way. That we actually don't want one thing recording more than one thing. so we lose something, we only lose one piece of it. I have recorded stuff that is less mission critical with software. Just really watch what your CPU looks like when you do that. It can stack up pretty high. And so remember that you want to aim for 40% on your CPU, and you never want to go over 60 if you're doing a project that matters.
Kai Cochran, can you do it in 30?
Yeah, and a quick one. The nice thing about the newer models is they have 10 gig Ethernet, so you can pull these files off super quickly, so you don't ever have to touch that media. Once it's in there, you just leave it. So pretty cool devices to have with the 10 gig Ethernet with the new stuff, because my stuff's at 1 gig, and it's...
Hey, if you're getting value out of the show and you value what we do here, there are a few ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can volunteer at officehours.global/volunteer and become part of the team that makes all this possible every day. Or if you'd like, you can donate at officehours.com/donate. Just giving you the heads up. If you like this, that's how you keep us going over the course of time. Next question.
Another QR code question from Michael in Sierra Madre, California. I learned about programs like Companion and Zoom OSC from this show. Is there a website, or does the Office Hours Discord have a thread that lists all of the amazing tools and apps that are talked about on the show?
Alex.
We do. In Discord, if you're in Discord, there'll be I think there's links. There's a link chat that everything that we talk about, someone puts that link into the or almost everything we talk about, someone puts a link into Discord to grab that. So that's the easiest way to go find it. And I think it's been there for over 1,000 shows.
Yeah,
so it's there. There's a lot of data there.
We've talked about a lot of stuff in 1,600 shows and counting, and yeah, there's a lot there. Guy Cochran?
Yeah, and one of the things for the community that I would recommend doing, if you find a nugget, please put it in there. Like the other day, I found one for Teams that there's actually a Teams conference room device that you can get used on eBay for like $200. And these guys that I know that do a lot of these high-end productions, they said, hey, Teams treats these conference rooms differently. You want to get one of these devices to act as your encoder. And I was like, it was a total aha moment. So they use them for pinning and for outgoing. But a little nugget like that, I put it in the Teams Discord immediately so that if somebody else in the community is having a challenge with this kind of stuff, it's valuable information that's in there. And also, if you do, the trick that I use with Discord is search by date after. So I'll go back 2 days and I'll say, show me everything in the last 48 hours so I can just quickly go through the whole Discord. I don't have those pings on notifications to notify me every time somebody puts something up at that moment. I want to look at it at my leisure. So those are some tips for using Discord.
And if you're not in Discord, not only is our Discord great, but it's probably something you should investigate. John Wallace in the chat just a minute ago said pretty much every tool that is critical has its own Discord channel. So there's a lot of information on technical stuff you can find there. Let's go to the next question.
Greg Kadoki in Toronto is asking, iOS 18.1 added call recording to the iPhone's phone app. Has anyone used it and the transcription output? And does it work in FaceTime calls? Check the law in your jurisdiction first.
Alex Lindsay, what do you think?
It's a bad idea. Like, here's the deal: is that I think that this whole recording thing is all an attempt to get people to come back to work. Because I had not last week, but the week before, I had 3 clients. We're on a Zoom and saying, "Hey, let's get on a call after the Zoom." Not let's stay on the Zoom or whatever. When I got on the call, it was because they didn't want to be recorded. And so the thing is that if you start, now that we're adding this call recording is poison to actually trying to figure things out, because you're building, just remember, if you record a call, every call is a legal document. You might as well have had your lawyer draw it up. So that little, look at every every lawsuit, and you look at, they went after their emails and they go check their emails out, and you read those emails and you go, what were they thinking? Like, why would they say that in email? Like, as a lawyer's son, you're like, why would they do that? Every time you record a conversation, you are building a legal document that if someone knows where it is or knows how to subpoena for it in discovery, they're going to go after it and they're going to grab onto these recordings, and that might be the other person using it against you. It is from a legal perspective, this is a horrible idea for all these companies to make this so easy to do. It was fine when it was hard and you pick it up and illegal in many states without the other side knowing. But this is just poison, and I really took me a little while to come around to my concerns about it. But talking to a couple lawyers that I know well, they're like, you should never be on a call that is recorded. And so you can tell where I think I am in the food chain in a meeting, because if I'm near the top of the food chain, I'll tell people to turn the records off. I'll just, I'm not going to be in this meeting if you have records, and it's a bad idea, really bad idea. So anyway, that's all I got to say.
Next question.
From the QR code, Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada asks, what is the best TV for Blu Ray and UHD? Best quality, best for budget, and best bang for the buck near 55-inch.
Courtney Gooden, can you help us out?
Boy, that's getting to be a broad field, and they're getting so cheap these days. I just looked, and 55-inch used to be the sweet spot for the best bang for the buck, because it was the most common panel produced. Now they're moving up to about 65, and every TV manufactured these days that's above about 42 inches is UHD or 4K. So they all have 4K panels in them. The difference has to do with the quality of the color filters. Either they're quantum dot or they're just regular color filters in front of them, and they're all LED backlit these days. So it depends on whether those LEDs are edge lit or if they're a array of LEDs that are individual arrays behind the screen. And the density of that array, they call mini LEDs, is micro LEDs is the highest, mini LEDs is next, and then it just says large field or backlit, LED backlit. Then that's the cheaper versions. The higher price you go, the more you have local area dimming, which gives you higher contrast. And then, of course, there's OLED, which has the highest contrast. You get blacker blacks in there and no fringing, but it's not as bright necessarily as some of the quantum dot or QLED LEDs. I just look at some prices here. Now's the time to buy because it's right before the Super Bowl, and that's when all the manufacturers put their big screens on sale. And here is a 55-inch, I think, for $209, and 65-inch you can get around $300 and something, which is incredibly cheap. I saw an 85-inch for under $1,000, like $799 at Best Buy the other day. Now it was a large array backlight. It wasn't a mini LED, but it was a Samsung, which is a known brand. The Insignia brand, which is the one I just showed you, is a house brand for Best Buy. So it's a cheaper panel and cheaper electronics, and don't expect it to last very long. And it's not going to give you the best quality picture, but it will be of high enough resolution, and they do support UHD. Not all of them support HDR, so check that out, and that would probably be the best. Blu-ray is UHD or just standard HD. So it depends on your Blu-ray player as to which type of screen is going to look best.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, the 85-inch. Just I would make sure that if I wouldn't buy one right now that didn't have Dolby Vision, like it, just that, because it kind of tells you that they're willing to spend money on it. So Dolby Vision is probably something that I would be looking for. As far as a Blu-ray, Pioneer and Sony are the two best brands in my opinion right now that are still producing them, which is pretty rare, but it is amazing. The best time to buy TVs is the second best time to buy TVs is right before the Super Bowl. The best time to buy TVs is right after the Super Bowl. They're going to dump all those 85s that they weren't able to pawn onto you. So in the next, the 2 weeks after the Super Bowl is the best time to buy a large screen.
Next question.
From Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I'm having trouble updating the latest firmware on my ATEM Mini Pro ISO. I have it on my network, my computer sees it, but pushing the update to it is not working. Any ideas why this is giving me problems?
Alex, can you help?
If you said you're seeing it over the network, try connecting it directly to USB-C. So most likely, sometimes the network won't work for a firmware update, but if you just take that and plug it straight into your computer, and then open up your ATEM setup with it connected, I have never seen that. Well, I have seen that not work. There was a big jump from the ATEM 2MEs to make them 4MEs, and there was a place where you could brick them, in that area where they wouldn't see that USB connection. But that's the last time I saw it, and that was probably 8 years ago.
Next question.
From Tony Mobley in Noonan. Good to see you, Chris Fenwick. Have you moved closer to Vinci Resolve?
No.
There we go. I was like, we were all waiting to see what the answer was, and the answer was exactly what we expected.
There you go. Next question.
Here's one from the QR code. Abraham Barrera in Flowery Branch, Georgia. I've been holding off on buying another Mac, waiting on the Mac Studio M4. Do you think the tariffs will affect prices on the Mac Studio M4 when it releases? Does it make sense to buy the M3 Mac Studio?
Alex, what's your radar?
If you can wait, I would wait. The amount of performance you're going to get out of the M4 over the M3 would erase any kind of minor update. Apple's been pretty good at doing this, and a lot of times they've been absorbing those costs. It might be a couple $100 more, maybe, but it would be worth it. If you can wait for the M4, what we're seeing with the Mac Minis is such a dramatic jump that I would hang out if you can. If not, buy what you always wait until you can't wait any longer, and then buy whatever is available that does the thing you need to do. That's the rule of electronics.
Let's do one more. We're going to equal time here.
Another QR code question from Kern in Maine. In Adobe Premiere Pro, is there a way to lock the workspace so panels do not move? This is for a high school media class with shared PCs, and it's an ongoing problem.
Alex, what do you think?
So I will argue, well, there's two things. One is if you do what I talked about earlier, which is reset every day, you'll have much less of a problem with this. Number two is it's good for them to know how to do it. Like it's good for them to know how to move around in the interface, regardless of whether it's Premiere or anything else. Understanding how to fix something gets to a point where it's not a problem. It will be a problem at the beginning, but them knowing how to get back to the state that they're in is worth them learning.
Don't forget, every day when we have questions left over, and we will today because as many questions as we did answer, there was a lot of activity. We will send them back to you. If you're in Mukana, they will come back into your notes field. If you use the QR code, they will actually be preserved until tomorrow and come back there. So just know that. Thank you for all of your questions over here. Also, a huge thank you to everybody who's involved with this show, putting this on, our producers. That's exactly what I was just talking about. Everybody who interacts with the shows, asks questions, votes on those questions, and otherwise tells us what you want to hear about, to the panelists who show up every day here and add their expertise. Great panel today, and thank you all for being here so very much. And to our incredible back-end crew, distributed all over the world, who are pushing buttons and doing much more beyond that, spending a lot of their time working on the shows coming up, vetting guests, welcoming us in, those of us on the panel and the pre-show. It is a village, and we appreciate each and every one of the people who volunteer for this every single day. Our Talak Traversal today, if you had gone around to get the answers that you were able to listen to on the show today, you would have had to travel 16,000 miles. That's 26,000 kilometers, or 127 million bananas for scale. We'll see you tomorrow.
Pretty happy with the infographic there. It's looking nice and clean.
It's really working nicely.
Was that Final Cut answer too long?
No.
It's too short that the TD didn't get your reaction, which I wish we would have been able to somehow let everybody see that, because it was priceless. We saw it here, and it was awesome.
No, I meant the question about the rolls.
No.
It's a complicated subject. I think you did a really good job of explaining it.
It's like a hour-long discussion.
Yeah.
It really can be. It's very, very deep. Saving my behind every single day with all these characters to juggle. Oh my gosh. Without rolls, I'd be lost.
I've never used the sub-rolls. I don't understand the concept behind the sub-rolls.
Well, Chris, there's a difference between people who edit and editors.
I know.
And the editors understand the sub-rolls.
Does that come across? Does that come across as insanely arrogant?